Hey everyone, Sheldon here, and this is Urban Empire. The game describes itself as offering a unique combination of city builder and political management gameplay. You play as a mayor, you choose from one of four different families, each with their own characteristics and different. You'll get to create and manage city districts, you need to fulfill your citizens' needs and desires, and also get to enact edicts and building city services around the city. You play through 5 eras, starting in the 1820s through 200 years of history. Now, on paper, this sounds very interesting and pretty unique. There aren't very many games that take this approach, and it is nice to see a fresh take on the city building genre. However, if you're hoping for a city builder, you're out of luck. You don't get to design the layout of your city at all. You don't get to put down your roads or lay water or power. You don't even get to choose where your industrial, residential or commercial zones are placed. All you can do is place the outline of the district. The roads will automatically be filled as with the various locations of your zones. You will eventually be able to choose the density of the district or the ratio of industrial, commercial and residential for the RCI demand, and even be able to add water, electricity and gas by ticking boxes in each of the districts. But you don't actually get to lay any of these down. There is no creative process in this. It's all automated by the game. Now, this is understandable since this game is supposed to be a mayoral simulator rather than a full-blown city builder like City Skylines. But what you do get to choose is where you're going to put your city services down in each of the districts that you create. And like any city builder, your citizens of course are all going to have needs which are displayed along the top of the screen, like health and security and fun and environment and that kind of thing. So you're going to need to manage these by building city services such as parks and passing various edicts in order to keep your citizens happy. The other services that you can build, for example, are hospitals and police stations and fire stations and things like this. These, as I said earlier, can be placed into each zone as actual buildings. Each new era offers new research possibilities and advances in technology that will allow you to pass new edicts, new services, and new types of buildings that will begin to start appearing in your districts. In order to build new districts or modify existing districts, or change the taxes or pass the edicts that I mentioned before, everything in the game needs a vote, and this brings me to the political party system in the game. The city council screen is the other screen in the game where you are going to be spending a large amount of time. When you start the game, there are only 3 parties, but as you progress through the different eras in the game, more and more parties are added, so it gets a little bit more complex as you get further into the game. Now, each of these parties falls into a different category. Obviously, we have the conservatives, the liberals, the left or the right, or some of the parties are sort of a mixture in between somewhere. And each of these parties is going to either favor or disfavor certain decisions that need to be voted on. You can influence the voters from being against to a swing vote or from a swing vote to in favor by using goodwill, which is a limited resource, but this accumulates over time as you play the game as well. And usually these should be saved for the more important votes that need to be passed. So you can either plead or be more aggressive in your persuasion. The effect is going to depend on the party that you're trying to influence and also the choice that you make. So, for example, being aggressive with a party that already doesn't like you could potentially also backfire. There's no indication of which of these choices are best in any given situation. So throughout the game, you're going to be coming back to the screen to vote for various things, increasing your salary or increasing the taxes, or building new districts and passing various edicts that appear in the game. You do have a personal budget as well that can be used to build stuff. There is a city budget as well. Your first district will be using your personal funds, but most of the districts, I suppose, after that will be using the city funds. The difference is that if you choose to build either a service or a building or a district with your personal funds, there doesn't actually need to be a vote on it. You'll also accumulate something called prestige throughout the game, and these can be used to initiate quick votes, so you don't have to wait as long in order to get things passed. And finally, you're going to be encountering events in the game that require you to choose one of the 2 or 3 given responses in the game, and all these have benefits or negative impacts on your city. If you've played Crusader Kings 2, you will be quite familiar with this idea of events. Unfortunately, in Urban Empire, these events do not inform you of the effect they are going to have on the city. So you have no idea what kind of consequence your choice is going to have. The game doesn't offer you that information. So you really are basically playing it blind. And the developers said that they wanted to do it this way because of part of the story. But personally, I think in a game like this, it's important that you know the consequences of your choices, since this is a strategic city building game. And in titles like this, the more information that is presented to the player, the better. So in order to know the outcomes of these various events, you will be required to have done these events before, which is going to require you to have played the game numerous times. I'm not sure that's such a great decision in this kind of game. Which leads me to another big complaint that I have about Urban Empire, and that is the way information is presented, or shall I rather say not presented to the player. The UI doesn't present information in a way that's easy to see. There's no way to get an overview of your city budgets, for example. You can see your profit, you can see your loss, but the game doesn't actually tell you what's contributing to all of these things. So you have no idea, you're earning this much from a district, you don't know where that earning is coming from, or if this is the expense of that district, you don't know what's contributing to all of those expenses. The game's overlay isn't very good either, unfortunately. You'll have services in all your districts. If you click on a service, it highlights that particular service's radius across all of your districts, which is fine. The problem is that all of the services have exactly the same icon, and the only difference between the icons is that they're slightly different colors. So it really is hard to tell what is what when they don't make individual icons for the various services, and why they didn't do that is actually beyond me. I don't imagine it would have been a lot of work to say, oh, this is a fire station, this is a police station, instead of just giving me the same icon. It's the service icon across all of my districts. And when you've got a big city, it's a little bit confusing to know exactly what is what, because some of the services are the same color, even though there are actually different services, as far as I can tell at least. Clicking on the district itself gives you some information, but not nearly enough information. There is no way to find out exactly what is contributing to the running cost of that particular district, or a breakdown of what contributes to the income of that particular district. And this kind of information should be a given in any kind of strategic city building game. You can also click on individual businesses to promote them, which increases the effectiveness. You can do this with services as well. The problem is that the businesses look identical to residential buildings. So, you're going to have to zoom in, move around your map and try and find these buildings. And honestly, it seems really odd to me that in a game that deals with the macro aspect of being a mayor of a city, that you can't just click on a button that says promote businesses in this district. There's no way to promote them all, so you have to go to individual ones. It just seems a little bit odd to me indeed. As I mentioned earlier in the video, you can add a number of different services to each of the districts: electricity, gas, and you can improve the roads in order to improve the needs of that particular district. The problem is that the majority of these upgrades to the districts are so prohibitively expensive and offer such a small benefit, in most cases it just doesn't seem worthwhile. And it compounds the issue when you can't actually get a detailed breakdown of the expenses, so you can't manage your budget properly. The game also suffers from performance issues. Once you've built a few districts, the frame rate will take a significant dive. In my case, I've seen it drop into 30s on my setup, and that was for like 4 districts or something like that. And bearing in mind, I'm running on an i7 6700K with 32 gigs of RAM and a GTX 1070. I do understand though that city builders for the most part all suffer from these kinds of issues. When the city gets big, the frame rate's going to tank. The problem is that Urban Empire doesn't look great either when compared to something like City Skylines. And to complicate that even more, the city feels lifeless and empty in comparison. So when the frame rate drops, it just highlights the fact that the game needs more optimizations. Urban Empire had a great premise, which is what drew my attention to the game in the first place. But unfortunately, after playing it for several hours, the problems definitely start to show themselves. The city building and management part of the game is pretty shallow, and the lack of information provided by the game in some important areas really do hurt this title a lot. The political aspect of the game is also pretty shallow and not really as interesting as it would seem on paper. Urban Empire does have a new approach for this kind of game, which I do commend the developers on, but unfortunately it doesn't succeed at either being very engaging or a very interesting game for the previously mentioned issues. and unfortunately ends up just being a mediocre game, which is a bit of a shame. However, if you are dead set on playing this, definitely wait for a sale. I think the asking price for what you're getting is a little bit high, but honestly, I would say that if you do want a more polished or enjoyable city building experience, go and play Cities Skylines. So that's been a look at Urban Empire, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, since it does help the channel grow. And as usual, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the section below. I've been Charling. Until next time.